So, the ongoing and somewhat comical struggles of Russia's only aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov, continue as Russia has been forced to admit its only aircraft carrier is out of commission for the foreseeable future, if not indefinitely. This is due to the cost of the Ukraine war taking funds away from the ship's modernization efforts. A modernization project that began in 2017 for the aircraft carrier was initially slated to cost around $1 billion and aimed at extending its life by 10 to 15 years. However, the project has faced numerous delays due to mechanical issues, construction defects, and accidents, which have significantly increased the overall cost of the project. In 2009, a fire broke out while the ship was deployed in the eastern Mediterranean, resulting in the death of one sailor and damage to the ship. That same year, it was involved in a 3-mile-long oil spill along with other Russian naval vessels in the area while refueling off the coast of Ireland. In 2017, during its deployment to Syria, the Admiral Kuznetsov lost 2 aircraft, a MiG-29 and a Su-33, due to technical failures in the arresting equipment that help an aircraft land. In 2018, a floating crane crashed onto the deck of the aircraft carrier while it was docked in Murmansk, causing significant damage and killing one worker. Also in 2018, the PD-50 floating dry dock, which is crucial for the carrier's repairs, sank, further delaying the repair schedule. In 2019, another major fire occurred during repair work, killing at least one worker and injuring 10 others. And then in 2022, yet another fire erupted while the ship was in dry dock for repairs, adding to the list of incidents that have hampered its refurbishment. When you look at that smokestack from this carrier, you wonder, what the hell is it burning? Old tires? I mean, the Kuznetsov isn't the only Russian ship that does this either. Here's a Russian destroyer, but what they actually burn is not old tires, but mazut. And the dependency on mazut restricts the operational time of the carrier to just 45 days before needing to be refueled and serviced. The US carriers only need to be refueled every 20 years, so their operational time is limited to other maintenance requirements or supply chain efforts or personnel requirements, and they usually deploy for 6 months to a year. If you're wondering what mazut is, it is a heavy, low-quality fuel oil, also known as heavy fuel oil or waste oil, and it's used in large ships, power plants, and industrial boilers. It is a byproduct of the refining process of crude oil and is typically produced from the residuals left over after lighter fractions of petroleum such as gasoline, diesel, and kerosene are extracted. It was mostly used by World War II era ships, so it's not old tires, but it might as well be, and due to the huge smoke it produces, it's actually a tactical disadvantage. What is crazy is the Admiral Kuznetsov is not that old. It was commissioned in late 1990, a mere 34 years ago. For reference, the first of America's extremely capable Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carriers went into commission in 1975. Since then, 11 Nimitz-class carriers were put into service, and 5 of them are older than the Admiral Kuznetsov, and they are all still operating. Meanwhile, the U.S. is now fielding their Gerald R. Ford supercarriers, with one already in service and another scheduled to complete next year. You can somewhat gauge the size difference between these two carriers by looking at the aircraft on deck. For instance, look at the 2 aircraft on the deck of the Kuznetsov here, their size relative to the entire ship, and you can see them lined up here. Now going back, and you can see how small the aircraft on the U.S. Gerald R. Ford are relative to the size of the ship. And the Admiral Kuznetsov maxes out at 36 total aircraft, while the Ford-class carrier has 75. And when you look at Russia's carrier, you would think it's like 60 years old or something, but nope, it turns 34 this year. And it is an inferior jump-style carrier to boot, meaning it has fewer mechanical parts for aircraft launch and should theoretically be easier to maintain, but jump carriers mean the aircraft are limited in fuel and payload capacity versus the catapult-launched carriers the US uses. The operational woes of Russia's only carrier just adds to the embarrassment that is Russia's Navy, as Ukraine, bolstered by advanced weaponry from the US and NATO as well as their own homegrown technology, have successfully targeted Russia's naval assets in the Black Sea. And I say this knowing full well that Ukraine does not have its own navy, and yet here we are looking at the Black Sea flagship, the Moskva, sinking into the ocean. So forgive me if I laugh at Russia's claims of dominance over NATO. You can't win a war if you don't command all 3 domains, air, land, and sea, and now potentially even space and cyber. We see Russia's struggles in Ukraine to command even 2 of the 3, air and land, and it continues to lose assets where it is technically uncontested at sea. But yet Russia says they're going to dominate NATO. Yeah, no, not even close. Of the 26 active aircraft carriers globally, between 21 and possibly up to 23 could be considered a part of the US alliance network. That extra 2 depends on India's involvement. Of the 21, 18 are NATO members and 11 are US organic. Russia will not dominate the seas, and given that they can't even dominate Ukraine, they won't dominate the land or air against NATO either.